3 minutes before 9 here on the program, and I think we should pay attention now to the Facebook story and social media in general. Let's just remind you, if you haven't heard, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has apologized at the European Parliament for allowing the misuse of data highlighted by the Cambridge Analytica scandal. But his hearing in Brussels has been criticized for allowing him to generalize his answers to very probing questions. Take a look at this report from Jack Parrock.
In Brussels, another apology, like the one in Washington last month, by Mark Zuckerberg for the data breach which hit 87 million Facebook users.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility. And that was a mistake, and I'm sorry for it.
2.7 million users of Facebook in Europe were part of the Cambridge Analytica data breach, who had their personally identifiable data harvested by the firm and used to try and influence them politically. During the hearing, Mark Zuckerberg did outline a plan to insert a clear history button in Facebook, like on web browsers, to reduce targeted advertising. He also said they're bringing in tools to reduce the number of fake profiles and fake news being circulated. And Facebook's influence on elections, specifically how much political parties are spending on advertisements on the platform, were top questions at this hearing. European Parliament elections begin here in exactly 1 year.
Well, the biggest problem with these sort of political ads is that it's not transparent. It's also not very clear which are ads that are targeting specific individuals at the expense of other individuals. So you don't know that what you see on the platform is what everybody sees. And that maybe gives a sort of false impression that everything's very transparent and democratic, but it's not.
Zuckerberg is coming under fire from European politicians and observers for giving what many are describing as general answers to detailed questions. And he didn't directly address accusations from some MEPs that the company's ownership of Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp and Instagram amounted to a global monopoly.
You have to ask yourself how you will be remembered. As one of the three big internet giants, together with Steve Jobs, I should say, and Bill Gates, who have enriched our world and our societies, or on the other hand, in fact, a genius who created a digital monster.
Facebook, as with all companies who handle data in the EU, is rolling out its way of implementing the EU's new sweeping data protection regulation that comes into force on May 25th. Mark Zuckerberg's visit here provided the desired apology, but many MEPs say they still have questions over how the social media juggernaut plans to prevent similar data misuse in the future. Jack Parrock, SABC News, Brussels.
So, as you saw, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg apologized to the European Parliament for allowing that misuse of data that highlighted the Cambridge Analytica scandal. But many say that He really didn't answer questions very well, as you saw in this insert. However, let's take this a little bit further and sort of bring it to our local perspective. And let's speak to Matiba Sibanyoni. She, of course, is the senior multimedia producer right here at SABC News Digital. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks so much for coming in. We always read from you guys. It's nice to actually see you.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, we looked at this insert. We've seen the pressure that Mark Zuckerberg is under right now. And from some of the articles I've read from the insert we saw, it seems that he's facing a tougher time in front of the European Union than he did in front of the US. I mean, what do you make of this?
Yes, it's not as easy as it was back home.
Yeah.
You remember last month he faced the US Congress, where they asked him from the most basic questions about Facebook to the more complex questions about data, how they use it and how they acquire it, and where exactly does a regular Facebook user stand when they use that. And the EU hasn't been easy on him, but same time, he has still not answered a lot of questions. He's apologized for most things, but it's an apology, but with very little explanation of what is really going on with our data at Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions that he got asked, they were kind of getting a little bit personal with him as well. One of the delegates or parliamentarians or whoever was sitting there basically said to him, Mr. Zuckerberg, we have to ask you, and do you ever ask yourself, how would you like to be remembered with everything that's going on? I mean, to try and compare yourselves with the likes of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and these kind of huge IT giants. what are you doing to this world? So they're taking a very personal attack on him as well, and yet the answers are not coming, are they?
No, they aren't. He did say that he didn't want to be a genius who came up with this beautiful thing that turned out to be some kind of like a monster in the end of the day. And you're right, there's been a lot of personal questions that he still doesn't answer. That's what the EU asked him. But you remember last month, I remember one of the delegates asked him, Mark Zuckerberg, would you mind sharing with us which hotel you slept at last night?
Yeah.
And he said no, which is quite ironic. This is Facebook. I mean, most people go and tag. If you're somewhere, you'll tag, this is where I am, this is where I'm sleeping. Take pictures of the hotel you're sleeping in. And they asked him that one question, where did you sleep last night? Would you mind sharing that with us? And he wasn't comfortable with that question.
With that basic question.
So that should get you thinking, like, am I willing to share that much of my personal information if the founder can't share where he slept last night?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose it asks the question, though. I give you the platform. Here it is. It's up to you to decide how much of your information you want to share. When it comes to something like that. But my worry is, I have a Facebook account. You have a Facebook account. Most of us have a Facebook account, but we don't actually realize that all of our data is in there and who is actually feeding off our data. And that is a big worry, is because we are unaware of what's going on. I'm aware that I don't post the hotel I'm staying in, but I'm unaware that my data may be used for something else. And I think that's at the crux of all of this, what we are unaware of as users.
Exactly. I like how you say that we can choose what data to share with Facebook. But the one thing that we experience here in South Africa, for example, you remember with the data sharing scandal, when they discussed it last month, was that there was a personality app that I think 13 South African used, but then that spread to so many other people around the world where, for example, if I used the data, the app, and you are my friend, whether or not you were using that app, if you happen to be part of that, whether or not you chose to download it and actively used it, they can still reach your data through me. So I might choose not to use a specific app personally, but if I am connected to you, they can still reach your data.
Yeah.
And they're still not very specific about which apps can do that, which can't. I know that with that personality app specifically, they pulled it off, but still, a lot of people were affected by that. So you might choose not to share some information, but your friend might choose to, and that might affect you.
It drove me mad at one stage seeing everybody using this same thing where it was that competition, whatever it was like, okay, just open this and then we're going to show you which celebrity you look like, or we're going to show you what you look like as a man, or we'll show you what you look like when you are 80 years old. And everybody was doing it. Yes. And the reality is that those are the kind of things that, because you basically click, yes, I give you access to all my information, and that's how it spreads.
Exactly.
And that's the problem.
Exactly. And the other thing that I noticed was that, when you go on, if you're on your banking app, for example, chances are you'll be more alert. You will make sure that your password is hidden. When you click something, you read it first. But Facebook and Instagram and those social media apps, you're relaxed. You're in your very easy zone. You're chatting with your friends. And they use apps that are very simple for fun. What do you look like when you're a man? Or this is how you look like when you're 80 years old. This gets you into a comfort zone where you feel more free to just, accept, yes. But you need to look at what are you accepting? What are you allowing people to see in your data. And that's the worrying bit. They get you into an emotional part where you're very relaxed. And then they get you.
Absolutely, they get you. I mean, we all want to know what we look like as a size 32. It'll be great. Yes. But the reality is, and let's bring it back to South Africa, because we talk about the crux of all of this was the fact that this may have, and many saying it did, influence the outcome of the US elections. I mean, these are the US elections. This is not a small country. This is the United States of America, the most powerful nation in the world. We have elections coming up next year. And I mean, we are as much at risk for manipulation of data, the manipulation of the way people think. It's already happening out there on social media. So, this could affect us as well.
It definitely could. I know that the information regulator wrote to Facebook to ask about how deep this problem is and how it's affected South Africans specifically. You remember last month or so, they had said that about 59,000 people were affected. This is almost 60,000. And they came back after more review on that. And right now, I think it's standing at 96,000 plus. So it's almost 100,000 South Africans that they have noted. And you must understand that that's only the ones that have been noted. There may be more that have been affected.
Wow.
I think it will affect us because, firstly, with the data that we share, as well as the fake news that goes around.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much news out there. And some of these fake news accounts have become, they look legit. Their language sounds legit. So it's very difficult sometimes to separate what is true and what isn't. I mean, I know on social media, there are also some journalists who get information wrong, like they read something and they post it and it spreads into something that might tend to sound like a reality or true until much later on. And with some of these things, when someone apologizes and say, oh, no, that was a mistake, you don't know how many people got that apology. So there are people who actually end up believing the news that spread.
We see it all the time, and particularly being in news. And I mean, this is where you work. This is the arena that you work in. And it is very worrisome what's happening on social media when it comes to the spreading of fake news, showing people, and people don't. We work in news, so I mean, I'll look at something and I'll automatically think, oh, well, this doesn't sound right. But more people will think it sounds right because they'll look for the sensational story and say, no, I can't believe what I've just read. This is amazing. I'm going to share it and I'm going to send it to my friends, and then it starts spreading like wildfire, and it's a very, very big problem. I mean, do you notice this in news and in multimedia, and how difficult is it for you to actually control the SABC News accounts and ensure that what you're putting out there is true and verified?
It's a very, very tricky place to be because, you know that with social media coming into the picture in relation to news, we have journalists, but there are times when someone is in a protest somewhere and they send information into the newsroom. So we have to scrutinize that, check, is it real images that have been sent, for example. You know, there's Photoshop. Like a few years ago, our biggest problem was Photoshop, that someone could manipulate an image.
Yeah.
But it's become worse than that, where you scrutinize the pictures that are sent. You have to call to verify. You have to make sure that you get your information right before we send out the news, which is why news organizations are still that important, as opposed to just hearing something from someone. And it is very difficult to stop something. Like you'll post a real story and people have already had the fake part of it and be like, no, but this is what we've heard. This is what we've had. This is what's going on. And so, which is important to make sure that the news that you read, you make sure that you get it from a proper news organization.
Source.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't just pick up news from anywhere you like. And because a lot, you even with the elections coming up, for example, there's a lot of propaganda that will go out that we're expecting. There's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of information. Like, for example, when we watched the video earlier, they were talking about targeted information, where you don't know if the stuff that you're looking at on your platform, on your Facebook page, is the same as the one that your friend is looking at. For example, if you read more fashion news, does Facebook target you to send you more news that's fashion related? They could send you a picture of a politician dressed in your favorite dress just so you can read that news and now read the rest of the propaganda that may be there. So those are the little things that we need to look out for.
They're little and they're big, and we've got to understand that Facebook is linked to Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. That is all of your personal data. That is your whole life involved in there. Just to wrap things up, I could speak to you for hours about this. I really can. One thing I wanted to add on to you is also in a world that just wants answers and they want them quickly, speed is of the essence. So, you know, as a news agency, we have to confirm before you go and put that online. You've got to be very, very careful. But just as a point of reference, I mean, when we're looking at the bullying on Facebook and the horrible comments, and you guys see them all the time, this is also another big worry and a very, very big concern. How do we manage our Facebook accounts? How do we ensure that, you know, we try and avoid that, or is that almost impossible?
It's not entirely impossible. You're right about people wanting to get news out first and the bullying. And so what we do is that sometimes you have to monitor it. We will block you off the SABC News website if you are bullying somebody. If we're spotted, we'll block it. If we notice that something is not true, we immediately, because sometimes when we post things and someone will comment with fake news, we block that out. So we keep our pages clean when it comes to that. Unfortunately, in South Africa, as much as you can take someone on in the legal platform who is bullying you online, it's still very difficult and expensive to get a bully into court. Most times you might have to pay for it yourself, which is still a big problem in our country.
Listen, we're going to pick up this conversation. I think this was just a start of something that we can talk about, and I'm sure viewers would want to get involved as well. But this was Matiba Sibanyoni, who is a senior multimedia producer right here at SABC Digital News, giving us perspective on Facebook and also a perspective of how difficult things are online and trying to monitor all of that. Let's take a break. We'll say goodbye to you after this. Stay tuned.